Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror and detail. Today we are going to share Wendigo and cryptids encounter horror stories. First story. The Wendigo is real. Hear me out, this isn't a fictional story. This is an experience I had when I was 11. A dream that still intrigues me to this day and has made me have a passion for proving the Wendigo. This is my story. I was up at my grandparents' cabin down in Arizona. Surrounding the cabin was a mix of desert landscape and lakes with pine trees surrounding. It was beautiful but strange. I would always take hikes by myself with a .22 caliber hunting rifle. I would start by hopping on the back of an ATV and finding a nice stream to hike up. It was always fun for me, and I loved the peace and quiet. Yet all of this beauty had something dark amidst it. It was night, and I could hear the coyotes howling and the screech of mountain lions in the night. I was sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, brandishing my .22 caliber. I was tired and laid it down. I started to just rock in the chair. I didn't want to fall asleep outside, so I went back in and plopped myself on the couch. I began to doze off. A dream was awaiting me. I was in the rocking chair again. I just kept rocking and wouldn't move an inch. All I did was stare into the darkness that lay in front of me. There was a sound in the woods. I could hear the crunching of sticks. The sound only grew closer and closer. A misty fog started to seep onto the porch. I felt paralyzed, unable to move a single muscle. I was frightened at this point. I could now make out a loud breathing and grunting. Then I saw it. Staring at me on 2 feet was a thing that looked like a deer decaying. Its skull was exposed, and it had what looked like moss hanging from the antlers. Its whole body was rotten, and I could feel its breath on me. Then I woke up. After years went by, I would have that dream come back and back to me. I felt like there was something more to it. Usually, we brush bad dreams aside. Yet this again seemed like more than a bad dream. One day I was watching YouTube and I saw a video. It was called Cabin Fever. I was in shock when a drawing came up of what I saw in that dream. I learned of its name, the Wendigo. Never before had I heard of it or seen anything of the like. Still to this day, I search for more answers. Sometimes I even have the same recurring dream. I feel like I'm persuaded to find the truth about whatever the Wendigo is. I almost feel as if I am connected in some way to it. Maybe I am crazy or something, but I just will always feel like there was more to this. Second story. Stay out of the woods during winter. Since I was young, my grandfather always told me not to go into the woods during the winter. He meant the Haddocken woods located near the border of our reserve, and not just any old forest. This always struck me as a scare tactic to keep the children from getting lost or climbing the trees which were so tall you might think they were brushing against the clouds. That was until this morning. The day was going as per usual. I woke up and walked over to my grandparents' house to greet her for our morning cup of coffee, but something felt off this morning. I'm not sure if it was just me still being tired from a shortened sleep due to the storm that had practically terrorized our grounds. But nonetheless, something was wrong. When I walked up those old steps on the front porch, it reminded me of the days I would go there as a young kid and jump up as many steps as possible because I was scared of something living under the porch grabbing my ankle as I was walking up. Of course, this was just a nonsense fear, and I haven't done that for years. I knocked on the door in a way that wouldn't startle them in their older age, and after about 15 seconds, my grandmother opened the door. This is where I noticed something wasn't the same. As she pulled the door open, she looked up at me with an almost confused look. She opened her mouth as if she were about to speak and ask what I was doing here, but her mouth closed and she remained silent. "Good morning, Grandma. How was your sleep?" I asked her to break the silence so we could move on with our morning routine. She looked at me once again. This time her eyes appeared diluted and scared. Your grandfather hasn't come home since yesterday evening, she said in a timber voice. With this news, I didn't immediately know what to say. My grandfather was practically a seasoned veteran around these grounds and rarely got lost. I took the initiative to ask the question that I feared I already knew the answer to. Where did he go last? I said shyly. When I asked this question, she stared in my eyes once again and said, "He went into the forest." My stomach dropped. My brain suddenly filled with all the memories of him telling me how dangerous it was during the winter. I told her not to worry, and that he probably just got invested into a hunt and lost track of time. She still seemed off, and was barely speaking to me, as if she was coming in and out of a daydream. Finally, I told her I was going to go look for him. After all, what did I have to fear? It was the middle of the day, and I have never been one to believe in these kind of myths and stories that grandparents tell the youth to scare them. I should have believed them. I began to walk away, climbing down those porch stairs again, when I heard my grandmother finally speak up once again. "He always liked those trees," she mumbled from behind me. I turned my head to see her staring up in the sky smiling, and she slowly lowered her eyes down and met my own, still smiling. I would be lying if I said that this didn't at least creep me out. I mean, your husband is missing and you are smiling and remembering how he enjoyed the trees? I don't understand. Regardless, I will do my duty and see if I can find him. I walked for about 30 minutes, give or take, until I finally reached the border of the infamous woods which I had been so repeatedly warned about. Seemed normal to me. Just a beautiful winter day where the bare trees held a couple inches of snow on each branch. A small amount of wind in the air, just enough to blow the snow around from time to time, but not enough to whistle. I began walking. Luckily, the snow was only a few inches deep, and my boots were high enough to cover until just below my knees. I walked and I walked, calling out, "Grandpa, Grandpa," over and over again in hopes he would hear me. He didn't respond. That was until I could have sworn that I heard someone whistling near this large oak tree about 100 feet in front of me. I began walking towards the whistle, but I started getting a strange feeling, and the hairs on my body began to stand up as I got closer. The whistle was not caused by wind, but it didn't sound like it was created by a person either. It was a single note, dragged out for about 10 seconds at a time, never changing. I neared the tree, but didn't see anyone. I did the only thing left that I could do. I began to raise my head and look up. There he was, tangled in the branches with what looked like every limb on his body being broken, as if he had fallen from the top but got stuck on the way to the ground. I began to cry and scream for help, but then I heard that whistle again. Same note, same length. I looked up again, but this time his eyes were wide open, and his pupils were dilated just like my grandmother's this morning when I met her for coffee. I'm not proud of what happened next, but honestly I don't know what anyone else would have done. I ran as fast as I could back to the reserve. I was running, crying, screaming, and just hoping to see another pair of eyes that looked normal so I could get that image out of my head. I wanted to see my grandmother, but I was scared of her, and I was not sure if I could handle it. But of course I had to tell someone that my grandfather is in that tree and potentially alive. I went back to my place first to calm myself down, as I was not even entirely sure what just happened was real. I took about 5 minutes to calm down, have some water, and get prepared to handle the situation I am now directly in the middle of. Finally, I opened my front door ready to deal with whatever I had just experienced. I began to run over to my grandparents' house again, almost tripping because my boots were not great for running, but I didn't care. I just had to get to their house. I got to the stairs of the porch and began to climb them just like I do every morning, and just as I was about to knock on the front door, I heard something I couldn't believe. The whistle. The same one I heard in the woods not long ago. My body froze. Every hair on my body stood up once again, and I was struck with the most fear I had ever felt in my life as I saw my grandmother and grandfather staring at me through the front window, both smiling with huge black eyes and then whistling that same note in unison. I turned and ran as fast as I could, still hearing that same note being whistled in the distance, not stopping until I reached my house. I slammed the door behind me and locked it immediately. There was immediate silence, the kind of silence that makes you feel uneasy and anxious. A silence that is so loud it was deafening. I shut the blinds and sat in my house alone, left to think about what I had just experienced. The only thing I could think to do was write about it so I could recollect and see if I'm going crazy or not. Maybe I am, who knows? Maybe I imagine the entire thing, because honestly, that would be better than it all being real. Third story. The Wendigo. Wendigos can take the form of a human. They stay hidden in the shadows, waiting patiently for an opportunity. A Wendigo appears human, but behind their eyes the true terror is only skin deep. A Wendigo has the ability to mimic another human, and a Wendigo can match the facial expressions and even voice of a loved one, if needed. In doing so, no one is wiser to the ulterior motives. A pitch-perfect facade designed to lure in unsuspecting humans. Wendigos don't exist, though. They are figments of a past culture, a myth created by a society fearfully aware of the evil that lurks. Why then was the Wendigo invented? To what purpose were these skin crawlers invented? Their vicious, emotionless malice and razor teeth. Maybe what is frightening is that at the end, when the body count is tallied, the teeth are matched to the missing chunks of flesh, and the limbs are dismantled from the ritualistic mosaic scattered across the forest. We wish that Wendigos did exist. We wish to invoke something non-human to account for our anti-human tendencies. Perhaps creating evil is truly easier than confronting the true terror behind the perfected mimicked emotion, the fake illusion of empathy and kindness. Perhaps the evil we fear is something all too human. Fourth story. I hunted the Wendigo that ate my sister. Last summer, my younger sister went missing on a camping trip with friends. She had just turned 20, and we had started to drift away from each other. I'd gotten busy focusing on my own life. I left the country for a new job. When I came back at Christmas, I found out she had gone missing. It explained why she hadn't been answering my messages. I didn't understand why no one contacted me about her disappearance. The police claimed to not have my new number and didn't have access to her phone. I was certain her friends didn't want me knowing because they had time getting their story straight. I asked for a leave from work to track down those 4 friends. They all claimed that she had gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom and no one noticed she hadn't come back until the morning. I didn't buy it. They all set a slightly different location from where they camped that night. None of them gave collaborating details about the campsite. One said they used logs for seats. Another said the entire area was clear. They were lying where they had set up camp, and it caused the search team to be looking in the wrong place. I passed along the information, but since it was still winter, the rangers couldn't search the forest. They promised when the weather got better, they would try looking in other popular camping areas in case the 4 just got confused. Her friends smartened up and refused to speak with me. Threats of lawyers started. I couldn't do anything else but go back to work and wait till spring. I got the call at work that she had been found. Well, parts of her had been found. A man who had been panning for gold found some finger bones in the river. Soon, with more people going into the forest for the season, more pieces started to be discovered. In total, half her skull, some ribs, and the finger bones were discovered. There had been some larger bones that hadn't yet been fully tested to find out if they were hers. It may sound gruesome, but I demanded photos of each piece found. I felt as if the police weren't doing their job. They closed the case, saying she had just gotten lost. They claimed the damage to the skull could have happened after death. After I saw a photo of the femur, I doubted that fact. The marrow had been scrapped out. There also were scratches on the bone the police said were made by animals. It did appear to have been gnawed on, but not by sharp teeth. Our parents died when I was 17 and she was 14. When it happened, I promised to take care of her. I failed her. I assumed since she became an adult, I was no longer needed. I was wrong. If I couldn't save her, the least I could do is find out what happened. Too many things weren't adding up. I quit my job, even though my boss said I could come back any time. He's lost a child, so he understood how grief worked. I did some research and packed what was needed. Then I drove to a small town by the forest looking for answers. I questioned some of the local shop workers, trying to find out what happened before the group went into the woods. Apparently, my sister had become friends with those 4 locals she camped with. It was the first time they met in person but talked a lot online. I asked if there was a reason why they suddenly decided to go camping. Anyone I spoke with suddenly started to avert their eyes as if they knew more, but didn't admit to it. There was an odd air about this town. Everyone appeared as if they were trying to cover up a darkness with fake smiles. After my short investigation, I headed over to the ranger station. I've spoken with them on the phone before, but I figured I would press my luck trying to get more information if they couldn't just hang up. Only 2 people were inside the small ranger station. An older man who was double my size, but I bet he was still fit enough to do his job. A younger woman who looked like she may be his daughter walked around the desk to greet me. She was extra friendly and reminded me a little of my sister. "I'm Dustin Hill. I've spoken to Ranger Dan before," I said, and her face dropped a little. Her smile was strained once she knew who I was. The other ranger didn't get up from his chair. His face was half hidden by a large local newspaper. He flipped the pages, trying to ignore me. "I have no news for you," he said, not even looking up. I wondered if he could feel my glare at the back of his head. The younger women looked between us in distress, unsure of what to say. "May I have a map of my sister's last location? I'm not from the area, and I don't want to get lost." The older ranger sighed and stood up. He sorted through some papers and grabbed a trail map. At least he was patient, telling me which path to take and how long the hike would be. He had nothing personally against me. He just wished I accepted my sister was gone and there was nothing I could do about it. I refused to believe that fact. "It's been a full season. I'm not sure what you think you might find," the female ranger said innocently. "Anything," I told her and put away the map provided. "I'll be staying in the forest for a while." Ranger Dan frowned. He crossed his arms, disapproving of my plan. Instead of trying to stop me, he gave me a single piece of advice. "Bring a gun." I stopped at the doorway to let what he said sink in. Sure, there were bears in the area, but no one had been killed by one in over 5 years. I nodded silently, accepting the help. He must have some sort of unknown reason for acting so short with me. If I only knew what that was, I may be closer to finding out what happened to my sister. I would discover this town's secrets sooner than I thought. It was too late in the day to start at the campsite. I rented a motel room, planning to set out in the morning. After it got dark, I put on my jacket to go outside for a quick smoke. I've been quitting on and off since my parents died. A figure pacing out by my window was also the reason why I decided to head outside. I startled the female ranger from earlier in the day. She had been trying to work up the courage to knock. She almost left when she saw me. It took her a moment to collect herself. It would be pointless going to that campsite, she told me. "It is because my sister was never there?" I asked her. Her lips tightened, showing that was the truth. She chewed on the inside of her cheek, not wanting to continue speaking. "Yes, I hated lying. Where they really went is complicated. I don't think taking a hike is overly complicated. Tell me, I pressed after I lit a cigarette. My voice had grown cold after my sister died. I only cared about finding out the cause and nothing more. I think my harsher demeanor unnerved a lot of people. They went to Rosethorn Cabin. It's a local legend around here. She started. My sister had always liked ghost stories and urban legends. She didn't know what she wanted to do as a career yet. The last I heard, she held down a few part-time jobs while trying to figure out the rest of her life. Had she come here because she wanted to write about legends? She had always been good at writing. 10 years ago, the two children of the mayor went to their cabin late in the season. A massive snowstorm hit. From what I heard, there was a misunderstanding where they were staying. It was a month before anyone figured out they were stranded in the cabin. When a small rescue team arrived, they found the son in good health, but the daughter was nowhere to be found. She let the implications sink in. It was a tragedy that didn't need to happen. But what does the death of a girl 10 years ago have to do with my sister? So, no offense, but I don't care what happened to them. I harshly said. After what happened, the mayor tried to pay people to keep quiet. The son went back into the woods to live in the cabin. Some people say it was to get away from people accusing him of a crime, but others claim something else. That he, became a Wendigo. She almost looked embarrassed saying the word. I've heard about them in passing. I wasn't into myths as much as my sister. All I knew about them was that you could become one if you ate human flesh. And for some odd reason, they had antlers and a lot of images people made of them. Why do they think that beyond the suggestion, he ate his sister to stay alive? Did he start acting weird? Did he look weird? I questioned. He disappeared from the cabin after the first winter. People claim to see a pale, thin, wild man living in the woods. A few campers have gone missing only to have their bones to be found, but with the marrow gone, as if something had eaten it. She paused to rub her arms as if she had gotten a chill. She also started looking around, expecting someone to be listening to our conversation. I didn't believe in the whole Wendigo idea, but I would consider the Rosethorn son to have gone insane. She pulled out some papers from her back pocket and held them out for me to take. I'm sorry about your sister. Her death should not have happened. The mayor has since become a powerful politician. He's done everything in his power to ensure it's not well known that his son might be living in the woods killing and eating people. Even if you find evidence that proves your sister was murdered by our local Wendigo, you may never be able to get the truth out there. Still, I made you a map of how to get to the cabin. I hope you find what you're looking for. I thanked her for the help, truly glad someone in this town was willing to tell me the truth. She soon left not wanting to be caught. People of this town thought there was a monster in the woods. They had been tight-lipped for my safety. I finished smoking and then went back inside the small motel room ready to try and get some rest. I would need it for the hike the next day. I checked out in the morning. I wasn't the best at reading maps, but this one was simple enough to understand. The trails up to the cabin weren't marked. They almost had been grown over due to lack of use. I needed to take a few breaks because my pack was too heavy. My job had always been in an office. I wasn't used to hiking. My body hated every moment, but I forced myself to carry on. I found the cabin a few hours before sunset. My stomach hurt from stress and hunger. I did listen to the ranger's advice. A small handgun that had once belonged to my father was holstered on my hip. We'd only gone shooting together once. After my sister disappeared, I went to the range to practice. Each time I imagined the target to be a bear or a shadow figure attacking her. It helped me improve quickly, but it didn't bring her back. No matter what I did, she would always be gone. The cabin was barely standing. The wood had rotted the elements without being maintained for so long. For some reason, the forest was quiet. The closer I got to the cabin, the less I heard the birds in the trees. Dark clouds covered the sun, giving the entire area an unsettling look. Soon droplets of rain started to come down. I didn't plan on staying inside the cabin. I went inside to avoid the rain, wondering if the weather would get so bad that it would force me to sleep inside for the night. The floorboards creaked with every step. Soon the rain and wind outside got so heavy it felt like the small cabin started to shake. It was a tiny space. There was only a living area with a small bathroom. No furniture remained. Only a rusted, useless stove. At least the fireplace still worked. It took a few minutes to get the fire going. Then I took out my flashlight, trying to see better in the gray light. The wooden floors were less rotten inside. There were some odd spots where someone had scrubbed them as clean as the old wood could be. I got down low to run my fingertips over old scratches on the floor. Tracing my fingers over them, I realized they looked to be made by something with fur claws. For an hour, I crawled over the floor, desperately looking for anything. A scrap of fabric or some bloodstains. I needed proof that my sister had been here. Just before I gave up, my light caught something between the cracks of the floorboards. I used my Swiss Army knife and carefully lifted the small object out from between the two boards. When it was in my hand, my heart nearly stopped from pain. I held a small silver letter charm. When my sister graduated, I bought her a bracelet that you could add charms to. The first one was an L for Lexi. She hated going by Alex, but as a big brother, I used her full name to annoy her. I gave her the bracelet to apologize for not respecting her name and promised to be better. I expected to get emotional finding something of hers. I've been almost numb since I heard about her disappearance. Even thinking her name almost felt to be too much. But now, I only felt a deep heat inside my chest. The charm was put away somewhere safe. I didn't care if whatever was in the woods was a Wendigo or a guy who just lost it. I was going to kill him. The storm outside picked up. At some points, the thunder and wind made the entire building tremble. I didn't want to be inside if the roof came down, but I wouldn't be able to see if I went outside. My stomach was too stressed for dinner. For hours I sat, facing the door with a blanket to try and keep away the early spring chill. I planned to stay out here for as long as my food held out for. I didn't need to wait that long. When the storm started to die down, an odd smell came into the air. I buried my nose in the blanket, trying to avoid it. It grew so strong my eyes started to water before I started to get adjusted to it. When I was younger, a trash bag broke when I tried to take it out of the can. Inside were some freezer-burned steaks we had thrown out along with other food waste. This smell was similar, but much more pungent than days-old rotten food sitting in the summer heat. Since the rain died down, I could hear the footsteps from outside getting closer to the door as the smell grew. My fingers tensed, ready to draw my weapon. So very slowly the door started to open, creaking as it did so. A tall, thin figure took a single step inside the cabin. My eyes had long since adjusted to the dark. Because of this, my body froze in fear seeing what had just entered the cabin. He wore scraps of dirty, stained clothing. The lips were torn away, revealing pale gums. This person had no muscle mass and looked to be a walking skeleton with a thin layer of skin clinging to their bones. Long, dirty fingernails gave the bony hands a dangerous appearance. For a moment, the eyes appeared to glow white, causing my heart to skip a few beats. When it met my eyes, it smiled and inhaled a rancid breath. I snapped out of my trace. Within a second, I threw off the blanket and started firing. Even in the dark, I should have hit him at such a close distance. I lost count of how many times I pulled the trigger. Dark blood that appeared black poured from 3 bullet wounds on its chest, and yet those long legs covered the distance between us, showing not an ounce of pain. It fell on me. I kicked, threw punches, and did everything I could to get that vile creature away. To my horror, it started laughing. My arms were pinned down by strength it should not possess. I've never felt so scared and helpless before. "You smell like her," a low voice rasped. I felt as disgusted as I was angry. I hated this thing with every single fiber. Amused, he brought his face closer. The stench was almost overwhelming. Thick blood dripped onto my clothing, soaking through. Strangely, it felt ice cold. This terrifying creature couldn't be natural. "Are you jealous?" He spoke through rotten teeth. "You loved her, and yet I was the one to eat her. To have her be a part of me forever. Don't you wish it was you?" I shut my eyes, trying to force back the sheer rage. A chill ran down my back as my mind thought of something I tried to hide from. That I had nothing left of my sister. Everything she left behind didn't feel like hers. Not even the charm I found. She was gone from this world, and I couldn't seem to find anything to hold on to. A sound came from myself I first assumed was a wild animal outside. I forced everything into my arms to throw off this creature. It tried to recover and claw at my face. In my fury, I lashed out and bit down so hard on one of its fingers that my teeth ripped it off. I spat out the foul thing, the blood almost like acid in my mouth. He reeled back in pain long enough for me to grab the blanket. In one swift moment, I tossed it over the creature's face, blinding it long enough to grab the pistol I had dropped in the earlier struggle. Pressing it to the creature's skull under the blanket, I fired until it was empty. More dark blood started to soak the material. With burning lungs, I crawled away, waiting for the thing to move again. Surely it was dead. It needed to be dead. And yet it sat up, black stained blanket still over its face. Was I just seeing things? "Do you still love her?" It spoke in a garbled voice. "Shut up," I hissed. "She's still here." It raised pale, thin arms as if trying to offer something. I shook my head, trying to refuse what I was seeing. "I love you because she loved you." I took her into myself. "We can all be together. Don't you want that?" Rage boiled over. A heavy-duty flashlight sat waiting on the floor next to my pack. I grabbed it in a blind rage. The first impact against the creature's skull painfully ran up my arm. After that, I don't remember much. Not how many strikes I brought down. Not when the flashlight broke and when I switched to my fists. Or when I broke my fingers from punching down as hard as I could. All while that monster laughed. I eventually collapsed. Body and mind wore thin. When I woke, the light of dawn crept through the dusty windows. For a moment, I thought what happened had been a dream. When I sat up, I found the beaten body of the creature where I left it. I considered burning down the entire cabin with the body inside. My hands were so ruined from the beating that I couldn't light a fire. Instead, I dragged the body into the woods and then kicked leaves to cover as much of him as I could. When my hands recovered, I was coming back to set a much-needed fire. The hike back was brutal. Either I hid my broken hands well, or the owner of the motel didn't care. I knew I couldn't go to a hospital for my injuries. I just collapsed in the motel bed, trying to fight back the pain long enough to rest. A few hours later, a knock at the door dragged me from my nightmares. I almost didn't answer it. Just in case there was something wrong with my credit card, I opened the door wondering if I was going to be kicked out. Instead, Ranger Dan was on the other side holding a first aid kit. He silently walked inside. I let him work on the cuts and broken bones and was relieved it wasn't as bad as it felt. There were 2 sons, you know. He started not looking up from his work. The oldest son wasn't at the cabin with his younger siblings. He blamed himself for what happened and killed his younger brother. Then the strangest thing started to happen. He grew sickly and distant. Soon, he left town for the cabin where his sisters had died. We all knew something wasn't right with him, but we didn't know how bad it was until the bones, missing the marrow, showed up after some hikers disappeared over the years. I chewed on my cheek, tasting blood. These people had known for years about the monster in the woods, and they had done nothing. My sister, my dear Lexi, was dead because of that. I sat grinding my teeth in silent anger. "Are you heading home or somewhere else?" the ranger asked in a serious voice. At first, I didn't know what he meant. I had killed what took my sister away, but I didn't feel as if I had a home to return to. It would be impossible to just go back to my regular life after this. He spoke again, and his next question made my body turn cold. "Are you hungry?" I was starving, which was to be expected because I hadn't eaten much in almost 2 days. This hunger was different. It hurt so deep down inside it should be impossible. Like a black hole had opened in my stomach. "Why did you never kill what was in the forest?" I asked in a shaking voice. For once, he answered my question. "It can't be killed." He finished up his task and left the room, not even looking back. Once he was gone, my body started to shake. I was cold, so damn cold. No amount of hot water from the shower helped. Something was wrong with me, and I didn't want to admit it. I'm going back into those woods. I need to burn a Wendigo. But I didn't want Lexi to have died without anyone knowing what happened to her. I may not be able to come back out of those woods. Honestly, I would like to believe my mind snapped from the intensity of what happened. But didn't people say crazy people don't know they're crazy? I knew the vast, empty hunger was insane. I knew this cold running through my body wasn't natural. And I know sane people don't start chewing layers off their lips. I'm scared of what I'm becoming. Crazy or a Wendigo. Either way, I love my sister, and fire should solve this problem before I pass it on to someone else. Fifth story. Black-eyed kids. I've been asked by a couple of members to post my own black-eyed kids experience. It was a cold October evening, not too far off from Halloween. I remember sitting in my room, playing the original Suikoden. The evening was slowly creeping by, so I decided to go to the corner store. It was only 3 blocks, shouldn't be much trouble, right? During my walk, I see the normal. The occasional person putting up Halloween decorations and kids playing in their yards. But this story is about something far more sinister. I remember seeing 2 teens about age 14, knocking on a door asking to use the phone, which of course I thought was weird because most teens these days have phones. As I kept walking, they stopped and stared at me for a short moment. I felt the blood in veins chill. I felt so creeped out I hurried to the next block. The next block seemed fine until I looked behind me and saw the 2 teens were following me. I took off sprinting to the store at this point. I saw the sign for the store, and relief washed over me. I opened the door, and I told the cashier about what happened on the way here. He looked at me slightly creeped out and told me a story about this happening to him in his hometown and how they found him the day he left and asked for his help in an emotionless voice, and he told me to never agree to help. He told me another story, but at that point I was no longer paying attention because they were standing at the door asking to be let in. The cashier freaked out and locked the door. The teens never seemed to waver or leave. They wouldn't step away from the door. It had been an hour. The cashier and I were ready to fight our way out, but instead he took me out the back. The one teen came around the back just as the door shut behind us. "Can you help me?" is all he could say. He was closing in on us, and his eyes. They were black as a starless night. They were peering right into my soul. I couldn't help but gaze into his eyes. The terror. I can't remember too much of what happened next, but I do recall the sounds of struggle. When I came to, The cashier was struggling with both teens. He was calling out to me for help. I ran towards them, grabbed him by his collar, and pulled him between the two, and knocking them over in the process. I didn't look back until I was near my house. The cashier was gone, but the teens were still following behind. I ran into my house, closed all the blinds, and turned the music up. I got lucky that day, but I'm not sure how long I can keep out of their grasp. I tried to find and thank the cashier for saving my life that day, but he didn't show up to work after that. I asked his booze, and he told me he called over the phone and quit. He said he was moving. To this very day, I sometimes feel the fear of those eyes watching me as I drive to work. I sometimes will look out my window and swear I see them watching my house from a couple blocks away, waiting for their next chance. Sixth story. I got stuck in a cabin on a snowy winter night. What I witnessed can't be of this world. I grew up treasuring nature so much. If I went to the woods, fishing, or in the mountains, the tranquility these experiences brought with them had no match. Some were even ethereal. I could feel Mother Nature living and breathing, always ensuring I had everything I needed while stepping on its rich grounds. Last year, I bought a cabin up in the mountains. I have always liked to disconnect from the city in the cold winter and just go to a place that feels like magic. This cabin had the feeling of being somewhere in that realm. Excitement took over me when I thought I finally had my own place in the snowy mountains. Away from the city, away from work, and from people who make so much noise that sometimes I just need a little breather. So the acquisition of the log cabin couldn't have come at a better time. With my head almost exploding and my mind fogged with the dullest things and the most mundane tasks possible at work, I couldn't wait for a few days to recharge my batteries. With no other than my trusted associate, my daring sidekick, and my best friend, the Irish setter Blaze, who had just turned 6 years old, I decided to pack all the things needed and go. I drove for almost 3 hours. The trees hung heavy with snow, and the flakes fell slowly on the ground. I felt like being in a fairy tale, a vastness of white that conquered all the old land for miles and miles in front of my eyes. I stopped the car somewhere along the way to get fresh water from a spring that ran through the frozen woods. The sight was a spectacle, and I couldn't help but drink. It was so cold I felt my chest turning to ice, yet it was so refreshing. So I took a few gallons with me for the cabin so Blaze and I wouldn't get dehydrated. I reached the cabin in the afternoon. The temperature began dropping as nightfall approached. I had maybe 2 hours tops of daylight. I parked the car, took the supplies and food inside, turned on the generator, grabbed some firewood, and threw it into the fireplace. I poured some gasoline over, and the flame engulfed the logs. After that, I began shoveling the snow on the front porch and around the house. I also took my hunting rifle because I thought a rabbit stew wouldn't hurt anyone. I always liked it, and Blaze liked it too. Time passed quickly enough, and after finishing all the chores, the time came to go inside and make some food. I had some canned dog food for Blaze, and as I felt my stomach growling, the mouth-watering image of sausage and eggs on toast came to mind. I lit some candles to make the ambience more pleasant. I also turned on a lantern, and everything seemed to be perfect. Night fell over the isolated cabin, and the winter winds howled outside over the infinite blanket of snow. Shadows danced on the walls like little devils. The crackling would sing its song, bringing peace to my tired mind. The cabin felt like a gift from God. I had no television to distract me and didn't check the internet. I only kept my cell phone with me as a precautionary measure because accidents could have happened. Even though the reception had been pretty bad, it still allowed to call 911. After finishing eating, I enjoyed a beer and a book. I fell asleep in an instant, poof, just like that. The fresh air has had this effect on me ever since I was a kid. The book fell from my lap and thudded on the floor. I instantly jolted awake and saw Blaze looking at the door. He stood still, mildly growling. "What's wrong, boy?" I asked. I could see he was trembling both with anger and fear. He began nervously barking. I had never seen him like that before. Outside, in the howling wintry winds, I heard some sort of static sound combined with a low gurgling sound. It was as if someone was zapping through a broken TV where one channel was just annoying static and the next was unspeakable monsters raging. I peeked outside and saw nothing. Then I grabbed my rifle and wanted to open the door and check it out in person. Yet Blaze wouldn't let me do that. Instead, he stood before the door barking at me this time. Whatever roamed outside, Blaze felt it necessary to let me know if I went there. I would have found only death. What the hell is that thing out there? God damn it, I whispered to myself. I glanced outside the window again, and I thought I saw a shadowy figure looking at the cabin. It looked back and then went out of sight. Blaze barked as loud as his lungs could take it. "Blaze, come here, boy. Get here now." I called him. The only weak point was the window. If whatever was outside wanted to jump through like a beast, I said let it have it. I would have put 2 bullets between its eyes in seconds. Blaze would have probably eaten the whole thing in one big fat meal. The static and gurgling sounds never ceased, even though the creature had vanished. I rechecked the window. Nothing, I only heard those damn sounds. After a while, a large band came from the door. And then it came again repeatedly. It shook, and I got my gun ready to shoot. If that door had fallen, the death of whatever was on the side would have been swift. "Hey man, open up. These things outside will kill me. Please," the voice of a scared man said. He kept banging on the door as if his life depended on it. And it did. If I didn't act fast, the poor man would have been mauled to death by whatever beasts roamed the old mountain. "Hold up. I'm coming," I cried. I had to help that poor man. He was probably lost, scared, alone, and dehydrated. Blaze jumped in front of the door. He barked at me again, pushing me back. Something was wrong if he did that. "Come on, man. Just open the goddamn door already, will ya?" He banged again. Blaze kept on barking violently. "Sorry, Haas. No can do," I replied, understanding that this was something else, not a man. I trusted Blaze more than I trusted myself. He was one brave and intelligent dog, a true friend and companion. The beast howled, and I heard its voice changing as it drowned. It coughed, it spat, and I thought it was asphyxiating. "Sweetie, can you please open up for Mama? I have a gift for you. It took me so long to find you, and I want to give it to you," my mother's voice said. "What the f—" I said, almost dropping the rifle from my hands. My mom died when I was just a kid, and except for her warm smile, the voice was the only other thing I remembered about her. Then banging noises came from around the house, as if the number of creatures outside had grown exponentially. I had gone there expecting to find paradise and solitude, but it turns out hell had frozen over in that exact place. Nothing natural and of this world could have made those noises and then mimicked my dead mother's voice. Again, I checked the situation outside. The shadowy creatures had grown in numbers. I counted 12 of them. 6 just stood motionless while the other 6 growled, snarled, and howled in the dead of night. I saw one of them coming closer to the window and went a few steps back. It glued its dead eyes to the window. It didn't have a nose, just 2 small holes. Its mouth was a straight horizontal line. It opened it and sucked on the window. In doing so, it revealed small rows of sharp teeth. "Why don't you open up for your dear old grandfather? It's cold outside, sonny boy," the creature snarled. Grandpa died too when I was just a kid. After my mom's death, he had a heart attack because he couldn't cope with her being gone. I just looked at it as it mimicked my grandfather's voice. I don't know how the hell it knew my mom's or my grandfather's voice, but it happened. Maybe it read my mind and browsed my memories. Maybe by doing so, it extracted their voices from my head. Hell, this sounded crazy as hell to me, but what I had witnessed shouldn't have been possible. And just seeing that craziness, every scenario I thought it might have been likely. The glass began to crack under the pressure of the creature's face. But fortunately, I had parked the Jeep right in front of the house so that I might have just made a run for it. The banging all across the house intensified, and I felt the pressure of death clawing my heart. The window would give in soon, so I said to hell with it. Instead, I pointed the rifle straight at the ugliness and pulled the trigger. It blasted its head into millions of pieces, and everything stopped. "Blaze, we're going to make a run for it, buddy," I said, hoping for the both of us to escape that mess. I grabbed a burning piece of wood from the fireplace with one and busted through the door. The shadowy creatures had even grown in numbers, probably 20 or 30 of them. Blaze barked, foaming at the mouth. "William, William, William," a raspy voice said. It was alien to me, not similar to anyone I knew. I turned around and saw them all gathered in a herd, waiting to attack. "Stay back," I said, threatening them with the torching wood. They hissed and collectively stepped back. I threw the wood at them, and they scattered in an instant. I opened the car door for Blaze to go in, and he immediately jumped in the passenger's seat. A pair of claws grabbed my ankle from under the Jeep and pulled me. It caused me to fall, and I saw the abomination crawling up on my leg. I hit it in the head with the butt of the rifle. Then, when it hissed with its horrible mouth, I put the barrel in it and shot. It blew its brain out on the side of my car. I hit the ignition, and the car came to life. Blaze was agitated and scared. I patted him on the head and told him it would be all right. I pushed the pedal to the metal and ran over those creatures, feeling their skulls crack under the wheels. A few hours later, I was back in my apartment with Blaze. It was quiet. Maybe the city wasn't so bad after all. This happened last year. A few weeks after the incident, I received an anonymous message saying, "Hello, William. You need to come back to the cabin. There are urgent matters that I need to talk to you about. I'm one of your neighbors. Sincerely, Thomas." I did remember seeing a few houses on my way up there, but didn't think to stop. Also, the former owner had vanished into thin air. I didn't go back yet. Maybe somewhere in the future. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comment section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.